I buried my son on a Thursday in October. The magnolias were still blooming. White petals fell on the casket as they lowered it down. I wore the dress Lucas bought me 3 years ago. Shallow Gulf water blue. He said it made my eyes look young. Now those eyes watched dirt cover him. Celeste stood beside me in black. My daughter-in-law. She touched my dress like it was dirty. Her glass clinked against mine during the toast. Red wine down pale silk. She smiled when she did it. The heat pressed down. Sweat ran under my collar. I counted the petals on the casket. 14. Then the ropes pulled and the count didn't matter. People watched me. I didn't cry. By the time the music changed, I knew. This night would not be the last time I bled. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. 3 weeks earlier, Brianna called on a Tuesday morning. My daughter's voice was bright. Too bright. She wanted me to stay, for a while, at the big house. The one Samuel had paid for. 15 years of mortgage. She said the rooms were empty now. The kids had left for college. I could hear her pacing. Hardwood floors under her feet. She was rehearsing this. Just until we figure things out, Mom. Steam rose from my coffee cup. I watched it disappear. I asked what things. She paused. Then the script came out clean. Refinancing. A clean authorization. A mother who trusts her son. Lucas had told her to call. My son. The lawyer. Brianna said I would believe anything labeled taxes. She wasn't wrong. That night I opened the cedar box. The one under my bed. I touched the deed. My father's cologne still lived in the paper. Faint but there. I turned to my address book. Yellow pages. Names I hadn't needed in years. One name stood out. Audrey Vance. She had been my father's student. Now she was a municipal appraiser. She read fine print like liturgy. The magnolias outside my window were starting to turn. I could smell the rot coming. I called her the next morning. Audrey arrived on Thursday with brisk kindness. She carried a tablet and a leather bag. Her shoes were loud on my kitchen floor. She toured the crown molding. She touched the old oak. Her fingers moved like a historian. She asked neutral questions. Who installed the floors? When the roof was last done? She didn't ask what I already knew. That this house was being appraised for evaluation. Tied to temporary authorization. The phrase made my teeth ache. It tasted like rust. She explained the city's historic overlay. The state preservation register. If I filed, no sale or mortgage could advance without the true owner's consent. Certain actions would freeze entirely. It would not roar. It would obstruct. Quietly and completely. I listened. I nodded. I poured her tea. The next day I met Walter Briggs. Samuel's friend. An honest lawyer who still smelled faintly of tobacco and lemon oil. He promised filings that read like granite. He promised patience that moved like winter. I signed the papers in his office. The ceiling fan turned slow above us. The light was yellow and old. Walter looked at me over his glasses. Your son won't like this. I folded my hands. The skin was thin now. Veins like rivers on a map. I know. He nodded. He understood. I walked out into the afternoon heat. The magnolias were blooming early this year. The smell was thick and sweet. I thought about Lucas, my son who became a lawyer. Who married Celeste? Who bought me the blue dress? Who thought I wouldn't notice? The call came 3 days later. Lucas. His voice was tight. Mom, we need to talk. I was in the kitchen. Carrots on the cutting board. The knife was sharp. I asked if he wanted dinner. He didn't answer that. He said Brianna told him I'd hired an appraiser. That I'd frozen the property. I kept cutting. The rhythm was steady. Carat coins fell in a line. I protected it, I said. From what? From temporary authorization. Silence. Then his lawyer voice came through. Smooth and hard. That was for estate planning, Mom. For your protection. The knife stopped. I looked at the carats. 18 pieces. All the same size. I've been protecting things since before you were born, Lucas. This is different. Yes, I said. It is. He hung up without saying goodbye. I finished making dinner. Pot roast. Carrots and potatoes. The house smelled like my mother's kitchen. I ate alone at the table. The chair across from me was empty. Samuel's chair. He would have laughed at this. My gentle husband. He always said Lucas got his sharp edges from my side. He was right. 2 weeks passed. Lucas didn't call. Brianna sent short texts. Checking in. Hope you're okay. I didn't answer. The magnolias dropped their petals. The yard was covered in white. Like snow in October. Then the call came. Tuesday. Just after dawn. It was Celeste. Her voice was flat. Professional. Lucas is in the hospital. You should come. The phone felt heavy. The morning light was gray. What happened? Heart attack. Last night. I asked which hospital. She told me. Then she hung up. I drove through empty streets. The city was still sleeping. The magnolias were brown now. Dead on the branches. At the hospital, Celeste waited in the lobby. Her dress was black. Her face was pale. She looked at my blue dress. The one Lucas bought. He's stable, she said. For now. I asked to see him. She shook her head. He doesn't want visitors. The air conditioning hummed. Footsteps echoed down the hall. I stood there. I didn't move. Celeste's eyes were cold. You should go home. I looked at her. Really looked. I saw what Samuel always saw. The careful smile. The measured words. The woman who touched my dress like it was dirty. I'll wait, I said. She walked away. Her heels clicked on linoleum. I sat in the waiting room. The clock ticked. Hours passed. Lucas never called for me. He died 9 days later. October Thursday. The magnolias were blooming again. Late bloomers. Confused by the heat. At the funeral, Celeste wore black. I wore the blue dress. She poured the wine. She let it spill. People watched. I didn't cry. Because I knew. This was not grief. This was not accident. This was the beginning of something else. The petals fell on the casket. I counted them as they lowered him down. 14 white petals. And one last burial. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The day after the funeral, Celeste came to my house. She didn't call first. Her car pulled into the driveway at 9 in the morning. Black sedan. New. I was in the kitchen washing dishes. The water was hot. Steam rose and fogged the window. Her knock was soft. Polite. I dried my hands. The towel was rough against my skin. I walked to the door slowly. She stood on the porch in black. Still wearing mourning. Her makeup was perfect. Her smile was small. She asked if she could come in. I stepped aside. She walked past me. Her perfume was sharp. Chemical flowers. The house was quiet. Sunlight came through the lace curtains. Dust moved in the beams. She stood in the living room. She didn't sit. Her eyes traveled over the furniture. The photographs on the mantel. The old piano in the corner. She said the house was beautiful. I thanked her. I didn't offer coffee. Her hands folded in front of her. Long fingers. Wedding ring still on. Gold and diamonds. She said we needed to discuss Lucas's affairs. The estate. The will. I waited. She explained that Lucas had been planning for my future. He wanted to make sure I was taken care of. Protected. The word hung in the air. Protected. She said there were papers. Legal documents. They needed my signature. I asked what kind of papers. Her smile tightened. Just a little. She said they were standard. Power of attorney. Medical directives. Transfer authorizations. Transfer. That word again. I asked transfer of what? She looked at me. Her eyes were gray. Cold as January. She said the house. For safekeeping. For my care later. When I couldn't manage alone. The clock on the wall ticked. Loud in the silence. I told her I could manage now. She nodded. Of course, she said. But Lucas had been worried. Before he died, he wanted arrangements in place. I asked when he signed these papers. She paused. Her tongue touched her upper lip. Just for a moment. 2 weeks before his heart attack, she said. 2 weeks. Right after I filed the preservation papers. Right after I froze the property. I looked at her standing in my living room. In my husband's house. Wearing black for my son. I asked if she had the papers with her. She did. She pulled them from her purse. Crisp white pages. Legal letterhead. Walter Briggs's name was not on them. I took the papers. I read slowly. The language was dense. Clauses and subclauses. Words that meant nothing and everything. One phrase appeared 3 times. Irrevocable transfer upon incapacity. I looked up. She was watching me. Patient. Like a cat at a mouse hole. I asked what incapacity meant. She said it was standard. If I became ill. If I couldn't make decisions. The house would transfer to a trust. For my benefit. I asked who controlled the trust. She smiled. She did. The sunlight shifted. Shadows moved across the floor. The house seemed smaller suddenly. Tight. I folded the papers. I handed them back. I told her I wouldn't sign. Her smile faded. She said I didn't understand. Lucas wanted this. He'd worked so hard. I said Lucas was dead. The words fell like stones. Heavy and final. Her face changed. The politeness cracked. Something cold showed underneath. She said I was being selfish. That I was too old to manage this property. That I would lose it eventually. To taxes. To maintenance. To time. I asked her to leave. She didn't move. She said I would regret this. That she was trying to help. That I was making everything harder. I walked to the door. I opened it. Morning air came in. Cool and clean. She stood there. Her purse in her hands. The papers still showing. She said she would be back. With lawyers. With doctors. With proof. Then she left. Her heels clicked down the porch steps. The car door slammed. I watched her drive away. The street was empty after. Quiet. I closed the door. I locked it. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against the wood. The surface was cool. I stood there until the shaking stopped. That afternoon I called Walter Briggs. His secretary answered. I asked if he had time today. She said he had an opening at 4. I drove to his office. The building was old brick. 3 stories. Windows that rattled in the wind. His office was on the 2nd floor. Books lined the walls. Law journals. Case reports. The smell of old paper and leather. Walter sat behind his desk. Reading glasses on. He looked up when I came in. He asked how I was holding up. I told him about Celeste. About the papers. About the words irrevocable transfer. He listened. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he sat back. His chair creaked. He asked if I signed anything. I said no. He nodded. Good, he said. Very good. He explained what the papers meant. Real meaning. Legal meaning. If I signed, the house would leave my control. Celeste would manage everything. Sale, rental, demolition. She would wait until I was declared incapacitated. Medical records, doctor's statements, memory tests. Then the transfer would execute. Automatic, irrevocable. I would have nothing. No home, no equity, no choice. The window behind him showed the street. Cars passed. People walked. Normal life. I asked what I could do. He leaned forward. He folded his hands. Age spots covered the backs. Like mine. He said I needed to document everything. Every visit. Every request. Every threat. He said I needed medical records. Current ones. Proving competency. Cognitive function. He said I needed witnesses. People who saw me, spoke to me, could testify. I asked if that would be enough. He looked at me. His eyes were tired, honest. He said maybe, if she pushed, if she filed for guardianship, for conservatorship. The word made my stomach cold. Conservatorship. A cage with legal bars. He said we would fight. We would build a wall of paper. Evidence. Proof. But he couldn't promise victory. I thanked him. I stood to leave. He stopped me. He said one more thing. Change the locks. Today. Now. I looked at him. He knew. He'd seen this before. I nodded. I stopped at the hardware store on the way home. The clerk was young. Tattoos on his arms. He showed me deadbolts. Heavy brass. Keys that couldn't be copied without ID. I bought two. One for the front. One for the back. At home, I installed them myself. The screwdriver was heavy. My hands ached. But the work was good. Physical. Real. The old locks came out easy. The new ones went in tight. I tested them. The bolts slid smooth. Solid. Final. The house felt different after. Safer. Mine. I made dinner. Soup from yesterday. Bread from the freezer. I ate at the table alone. Outside, the sun set. The sky went pink, then purple, then black. The magnolias were dark shapes against the streetlights. The petals were gone now. Just branches. I washed my dish. I turned off the lights. I locked the doors. Upstairs, I sat on the edge of my bed. The cedar box was still under it. I pulled it out. Inside was the deed. My father's signature. My mother's signature. My signature with Samuel's. Lucas's birth certificate. Brianna's. Photographs. Old ones. Yellow at the edges. Samuel young. Me younger. Lucas as a baby. Fat cheeks. Bright eyes. I touched his face. Paper soft under my finger. He had been mine once. Before law school. Before Celeste. Before ambition ate the soft parts. Now he was gone. And his widow wanted what remained. I closed the box. I slid it back under the bed. The house creaked. Settling. Old wood and old bones. I lay down. The ceiling was dark. I could hear my heartbeat. Steady. Slow. Tomorrow Celeste would return. With lawyers. With papers. With plans. But tonight the locks were new. The deed was safe. And I was still here. Still standing. Still fighting. Still alive. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Celeste returned 6 days later. This time she brought someone. A man in a gray suit. Briefcase in hand. His car was silver. Expensive. They parked in front of the house. I watched from the kitchen window. The curtain edge in my fingers. The man was younger than Walter. 40 maybe. His hair was perfect. His shoes shined. They walked up together. Celeste in front. Him behind. Like an advance and its army. The doorbell rang. I didn't answer. It rang again. Then knocking. Firm. Insistent. Celeste called through the door. She said she knew I was home. She just wanted to talk. The man said his name was Richard Pemberton. Attorney at law. He represented the estate. Lucas had been dead 12 days. I opened the door. The chain stayed on. They stood on the porch. Morning sun behind them. Their faces in shadow. Celeste asked if we could come inside. It would only take a moment. I said anything they needed to say could be said here. Richard smiled. Professional. Practiced. He said they had concerns. About my welfare. About the property. I waited. He said Lucas had expressed wishes before his death. About my care. About protecting family assets. My father's house. My mother's garden. Samuel's workshop in the basement. Richard said they wanted to honor Lucas's wishes. To ensure I was supported. Comfortable. I asked if they had a court order. His smile flickered. He said that wouldn't be necessary. If I cooperated. The word hung there. Cooperated. Celeste stepped forward. Her voice was softer now. Pleading. She said she didn't want conflict. She wanted what was best for me. I told them I had legal counsel. Walter Briggs. Any communication should go through him. Richard's smile disappeared. He said Walter was old-fashioned, not equipped for complex estate matters. I said he was equipped enough. Then I closed the door. The lock clicked. Loud and final. Through the window I watched them walk back to the car. Richard spoke. Celeste listened. Her arms crossed. They sat in the car for 10 minutes. Talking. Planning. Then they drove away. That afternoon I went to see Dr. Morrison. She had been my doctor for 20 years. Her office was in a medical plaza. Beige walls. Plants in the waiting room. The receptionist knew my name. She smiled and asked how I was doing. She'd heard about Lucas. I signed in. I sat. Magazines on the table. All from last year. Dr. Morrison called me back herself. She was 60. Gray hair in a practical cut. Kind eyes behind wireframes. She asked about my health. My sleep. My appetite. I said I needed documentation. Medical records. Cognitive assessments. Proof of competency. She set down her pen. She looked at me. I told her about Celeste. About the papers. About the words conservatorship and incapacity. She listened. Her face got serious, hard. She said she'd seen this before. Adult children taking control, declaring parents unfit. Sometimes it was necessary. Often it wasn't. She asked if I wanted a full evaluation. Memory tests. Mental status exam. Complete physical. I said yes. She spent an hour with me. Questions about dates. Names. Current events. She asked me to remember 3 words. To repeat them later. Apple. Table. Penny. She checked my blood pressure. My reflexes. My gait. She watched me walk. Turn. Balance on one foot. She asked me to draw a clock. To subtract 7 from 100. Again. I did it all. Every test. Every question. When it was done, she sat across from me. She said I was sharp. Oriented. Fully competent. She would document everything. Date it. Sign it. Seal it. If anyone questioned my capacity, she would testify. I thanked her. My throat was tight. She touched my hand. Her skin was warm. She said I wasn't alone in this. On the way home I stopped at the grocery store. Normal tasks. Normal life. The store was bright. Fluorescent lights. Music playing. An old song. Something from the 70s. I bought milk, bread, eggs, coffee. Things I needed. Things that anchored routine. At the checkout, the cashier was chatty. She asked about my day. If I had plans. I said nothing special. Just home. She smiled. She said that sounded nice. Peaceful. The word made me want to laugh. Nothing was peaceful now. I drove home. The streets were familiar. Every turn. Every stop sign. 40 years of the same route. The house appeared. White clapboard. Green shutters. The magnolia tree bare now. Winter coming. A car was parked across the street. Dark blue sedan. Windows tinted. I slowed. I looked. No one inside that I could see. I pulled into the driveway. I gathered my groceries. The car didn't move. Inside, I put the food away. Milk in the fridge. Bread in the box. Each item in its place. The car was still there. I checked from the living room window. Still empty. Still waiting. I called Walter. He answered on the second ring. I told him about Richard Pemberton. About the visit. About the car outside. He asked if I felt threatened. I said I felt watched. He told me to document it. Write down the time. The date. The license plate if I could see it. He said they were building pressure. Testing boundaries. Seeing if I would break. I asked how long this would last. He said as long as it took. Until they gave up. Or until they filed. Guardianship petition. Conservatorship hearing. A courtroom deciding if I was competent. If I deserved my own life. I thanked him. I hung up. The car stayed until dark. Then it left. No lights. Just a shape moving in the night. That evening Brianna called. Her voice was strained. Tired. She asked if I was okay. If I needed anything. I asked if Celeste had contacted her. Silence. Then a breath. She said Celeste had called yesterday. She wanted Brianna's support. For the estate matters. For my care. I asked what Brianna said. Another pause. Longer. She said she didn't know what to do. She didn't want to choose sides. I told her there were no sides. There was truth. And there was theft. She started to cry. Soft sounds through the phone. She said it was all too much. Lucas was gone. Everyone was angry. She just wanted peace. Peace. That word again. I told her I loved her. That I understood. That she didn't have to do anything. But I asked her one thing. If anyone questioned my mind, my memory, my capacity. If anyone asked her to sign something. To say something. To remember I was still her mother. Still myself. She promised. Her voice was small. Childlike. We said goodbye. The phone went quiet. I sat in the dark living room. The streetlight cast shadows through the windows. Bars of light and black. The house was silent. Just the clock. Just the furnace. Just my breathing. Somewhere out there Celeste was planning. Richard was drafting. Papers were being prepared. A battle was forming. Legal. Cold. Precise. But I had Walter. I had Dr. Morrison. I had documents and locks and time. I had the deed in the cedar box. My father's name. My name. I had 40 years in this house. Every floorboard. Every crack. Every memory. They could come with their papers. Their lawyers. Their claims. I would be here. Standing. Ready. The clock struck 9. The sound echoed. I went to the kitchen. I made tea. Earl Grey. The steam rose and curled. I sat at the table. Samuel's chair still empty across from me. I could almost see him. His smile. His hands. His quiet strength. He would have known what to do. How to fight. How to stand. I drank my tea. The warmth spread through me. Down my throat. Into my chest. Outside, the night was cold. November settling in. Winter on its way. But inside, I was still warm. Still whole. Still here. Tomorrow would bring more pressure. More threats. More watching. But tonight I had this. Tea and silence and stubbornness. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The papers arrived on a Monday morning. A courier. Young man in a brown uniform. Clipboard in hand. He asked me to sign. The envelope was thick. Legal size. Return address Pemberton and Associates. I signed. My hand was steady. The pen scratched across the paper. He left. The truck pulled away. I stood in the doorway holding the envelope. It was heavy. Official. Final. Inside, I sat at the kitchen table. Morning light came through the window. Dust motes floated in the beam. I opened the envelope. The paper tore clean. 23 pages. Legal letterhead on each. Dense paragraphs. Footnotes. Case citations. The title page said it all. Petition for appointment of conservator. They were filing. Making it official. Taking it to court. I read slowly. Every word. Every clause. The language was cold. Clinical. Detached. It described me as elderly. Vulnerable. Diminished capacity. Unable to manage financial affairs. It cited my refusal to cooperate. My hiring of counsel. My resistance to family support. Resistance. They called it resistance. The petition requested temporary emergency orders. Immediate control of assets. Pending full evaluation. Evaluation. Medical experts. Psychiatric assessments. Cognitive testing. They wanted doctors. Strangers. People who didn't know me. To decide if I was competent. The hearing was set. 3 weeks away. December 2nd. Courtroom 4B. I set the papers down. My hands were shaking now. I pressed them flat on the table. The wood was cool. Solid. Real. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. Normal sounds. Normal life. But nothing was normal anymore. I called Walter immediately. His secretary said he was in court. She would have him call back. I said it was urgent. She asked if I could come to the office. 2 o'clock. I said yes. The morning stretched out. Long and slow. I tried to read. The words blurred. I tried to clean. My hands moved but my mind was elsewhere. At 1:30 I drove downtown. The streets were busy. Holiday decorations going up. Lights. Wreaths. Fake snow in store windows. Christmas was coming. The world kept turning. Walter's office was warm. The radiator clanked. Old building. Old heat. He read the petition. His face was grim. He made notes. Small writing in the margins. When he finished, he looked up. He said this was aggressive. Very aggressive. Emergency orders meant they wanted immediate action. Before the hearing. Before I could defend myself. He said we would oppose it. File a response. Request our own evaluations. But the hearing was close. 3 weeks. Not much time. He asked about Dr. Morrison's report. I said she was preparing it. He asked about witnesses. People who could testify to my competency. My independence. I thought. Neighbors. Friends from church. The librarian who saw me every week. He wrote names. He said we would need affidavits. Statements. Evidence. I asked what would happen if we lost. His pen stopped. He looked at me. His eyes were honest. Sad. He said temporary conservatorship would take effect immediately. Celeste would control everything: bank accounts, property, medical decisions. I would need permission for everything, like a child. The room felt smaller, the walls closer. I asked about the house. He said she could sell it under conservatorship if she claimed it was necessary. For my care, for expenses, my care. My father's house gone. I sat there, the weight of it pressing down. 23 pages, 3 weeks, everything. Walter reached across the desk. He touched my hand. His skin was papery, warm. He said we would fight. Every step, every motion, every word. But I needed to be strong, to hold on. I nodded. I couldn't speak. That evening I walked through the house, room by room, touching things, remembering. The living room, Samuel's chair by the window, worn leather, his shape still in the cushion. The dining room, the table where we ate Sunday dinners, birthdays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. The kitchen, my mother's china in the cabinet, blue flowers on white. 40 years old. Upstairs, the bedroom where I slept, where Samuel died, peaceful, in his sleep. 5 years ago. Lucas's old room, still painted the blue he chose at 12. Posters long gone, but the walls remembered. Brianna's room, yellow curtains, white furniture. She had wanted it to look like sunshine. The attic, boxes of memories, photographs, letters, baby clothes, report cards. The basement, Samuel's workshop, tools on the pegboard, his workbench, sawdust still in the corners. Every room held something, someone, some piece of the life we built. 42 years in this house. Marriage, children, grief, joy, everything. Now strangers wanted to take it, sell it, erase it, for my own good. The next morning I started calling witnesses. First was Margaret Chen, my neighbor. She lived 3 houses down. We walked together most mornings. She answered on the first ring. Her voice was warm. I explained the situation, the petition, the hearing, the need for testimony. She was quiet, then angry. She said it was criminal, that I was sharper than most people half my age. She would testify, gladly, without hesitation. Next was Father Thomas, Street, Anthony's. I'd been a member 40 years. He was shocked. He said he'd seen me every Sunday, serving coffee after Mass, helping with the food bank. He would write a statement, sign anything needed. Then Mrs. Kowalski, the librarian. I'd volunteered there for 15 years, shelving books, reading to children. She was outraged. She said the library board would support me, provide documentation. One by one I called. One by one they agreed. By afternoon I had 6 people. Solid, credible, willing. I wrote down their information. Phone numbers, addresses, how they knew me. I gave the list to Walter. He said it was good. Very good. But he needed one more thing. A statement from me, in my own words, about my life, my capacity, my wishes. I sat down that night at the kitchen table. Paper in front of me, pen in hand. The words came slowly at first, then faster. I wrote about Samuel, about building this life, this home. I wrote about raising children, managing money, paying bills, maintaining property. I wrote about the last 5 years alone. Cooking, cleaning, driving, volunteering. I wrote about Lucas, about the papers, about the freezing of my property, about the preservation filing. I wrote about Celeste, about the visit, about the transfer documents, about the threats. I wrote for 2 hours. 3 pages, front and back. When I finished, my hand ached. But the words were there. True, clear, mine. I read it over. Every sentence. Making sure. Then I signed it. Dated it. November 18th, 2025. The house was quiet. Just the furnace. Just the wind outside. I folded the statement. I put it in an envelope. Tomorrow I would give it to Walter. Tomorrow the fight would continue. But tonight I had done something. Made a stand. Left a record. I went upstairs. The bed was cold. I lay down. The ceiling was dark. Sleep came slowly. When it did, I dreamed of Samuel. Of Lucas as a baby. Of Brianna's yellow room. I dreamed of Sunday dinners. Of laughter. Of safety. I woke at dawn. The dream faded. Reality returned. 3 weeks until the hearing. 21 days. 504 hours. I got up. I made coffee. I watched the sun rise over the magnolia tree. The branches were bare, black against the gray sky. Winter trees, waiting for spring. I would wait too. Patient, stubborn, rooted. They could come with papers. With lawyers. With doctors and judges and claims. I would be here, standing in my kitchen. In my father's house. In my life. Some things you don't surrender. Some things you fight for until the end. This was one of them. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The evaluator arrived on a Wednesday morning. Thanksgiving was 2 days away. The neighborhood smelled like cinnamon and turkey. Ovens warming. Families preparing. Her name was Dr. Linda Hartwell. She came alone. Navy suit. Leather bag. Professional smile. The court had ordered the evaluation. Neutral expert. Independent assessment. To determine capacity. Walter had warned me. He said she would be thorough. Skeptical. Looking for any sign of decline. I opened the door before she knocked. She introduced herself. Her handshake was firm. Her eyes were sharp. Measuring. I invited her in. The house was clean. Everything in place. Coffee ready on the counter. She noticed. She noticed everything. We sat in the living room. She pulled out a tablet. A folder. Forms. She said this would take about 2 hours. Questions. Tests. Observations. She said to relax. To be honest. To take my time. The word relax hung in the air. Impossible. She started with basic information. My age. 73. My education. High school. 2 years of college. Marital status. Widow. Children. 2. 1 deceased. She asked about my daily routine. What time I woke. What I ate. How I managed. I told her. 6:30 every morning. Oatmeal or toast. Coffee. I managed fine. She asked about medications. I listed them. Blood pressure. Cholesterol. Vitamin D. She asked who reminded me to take them. No one, I said. I used a pill organizer. She made notes. Her stylus moved quickly across the screen. She asked about finances. How I paid bills. Managed accounts. I explained. Online banking. Automatic payments for utilities. I balanced my checkbook monthly. Her eyebrow lifted slightly. Checkbook. Most people didn't use those anymore. I said old habits. She nodded. She wrote something. She asked about the house. How I maintained it. Repairs. Upkeep. I told her about the handyman. Tom Willis. He came quarterly. Fixed things. Cleaned gutters. I told her about the lawn service. Weekly in summer. Monthly in winter. She asked if I could manage without them. I said I chose not to. That was different from couldn't. She looked at me, assessing. Then she smiled. Small. Tight. Next came the cognitive tests. She asked me to remember 3 words. She would ask again later. Jacket. River. Yellow. She asked me to count backward from 100. By sevens. 93. 86. 79. 72. On and on. She asked me to name the president. The year. The season. The day. She asked me to draw a clock. Set the hands to 10 past 11. She gave me a paragraph to read. Then asked me to summarize it. She asked me to spell world backward. DLROW. She asked about current events. The economy. The news. Recent headlines. I answered everything. Quickly. Clearly. Without hesitation. She asked me to recall the 3 words from earlier. Jacket. River. Yellow. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Recognition. Respect maybe. She asked about Lucas. About his death. How I was coping. My throat tightened. I told her it was hard. That I missed him. That grief was complicated. She asked if I was angry with him. The question was sharp. Deliberate. Probing. I said yes. Sometimes. He had tried to take my home. She asked if that felt like betrayal. I said it was betrayal. She wrote for a long time. Her face was unreadable. She asked about Celeste. About the petition. About my feelings. I told her Celeste wanted control. Wanted the house. Wanted me dependent. She asked if that was fact or interpretation. I said both. She paused. She looked at me directly. No smile now. Just focus. She asked if I understood the conservatorship process. What it meant. What could happen. I said I understood perfectly. That I could lose everything. That I was fighting to prevent it. She asked why the house mattered so much. I looked around the room. The photographs on the mantel. Samuel's chair. The piano. I told her this was my life. My history. My autonomy. Not an asset. Not property. Home. She was quiet. Then she nodded. Once. Brief. The interview ended. She packed her tablet. Her folder. Her forms. She said her report would be ready in a week. It would be submitted to the court. She said she couldn't discuss her findings. That would be inappropriate. But she said one thing. Off the record. Quietly. She said I presented well. Very well. Then she left. Her car pulled away. The street was empty again. Thanksgiving came the next day. Brianna invited me for dinner. She and her husband. Their house across town. I almost declined. The thought of sitting. Of pretending. Of normalcy. But I went. For her. For us. The house was warm. Smells of roasting turkey. Sweet potatoes. Pie. Brianna hugged me at the door. She held on longer than usual. Her body was tense. Inside, her husband Mark made drinks. Tried to keep conversation light. Football. Weather. Anything but Lucas. We sat down to eat. The table was beautiful. Candles. Flowers. Good china. Brianna said grace. Her voice broke halfway through. She finished anyway. We ate quietly. Passing dishes. Making small talk. The silence underneath was heavy. Finally Mark asked about the hearing. His voice was careful. Gentle. I told them about Dr. Hartwell. About the evaluation. About waiting for her report. Brianna set down her fork. She said Celeste had called her again. Asked her to testify. The room went still. The candles flickered. I asked what Celeste wanted her to say. Brianna's eyes filled. She said Celeste wanted examples. Of forgetfulness. Confusion. Poor judgment. She said Celeste told her it was for my protection. For my safety. I asked what Brianna told her. Brianna looked at me, tears running now. She said she told Celeste no. That she wouldn't lie. That I was her mother. That I was fine. That this was wrong. Relief flooded through me. Warm. Overwhelming. I reached across the table. I took her hand. Her fingers were cold. I thanked her. The words were small, inadequate. She squeezed my hand. She said she was sorry. For everything. For Lucas. For Celeste. For all of it. Mark cleared his throat. He said they would testify for me. Both of them. If Walter needed them. I nodded. I couldn't speak. We finished dinner. We had pie. Pumpkin. Brianna's recipe. Samuel's favorite. The evening ended early. Exhaustion pulling at all of us. At the door, Brianna hugged me again. She whispered in my ear. She said she loved me. That she was proud of me. That I was the strongest person she knew. I drove home through empty streets. Holiday lights glowing in windows. Families together. Safe. Whole. My house was dark when I arrived. I turned on the porch light. The kitchen light. Small islands of warmth. I made tea. I sat at the table. The house was quiet around me. Tomorrow was Friday. Then the weekend. Then the final week before the hearing. Dr. Hartwell's report would come. Walter would prepare. Witnesses would be ready. And then Monday, December 2nd. Courtroom 4B. 9 in the morning. Everything would be decided. My competency. My home. My future. I sipped my tea. The warmth spread through me. Steady. Real. Outside, the wind picked up. Bare branches scratched against the siding. Winter sounds. I thought about Thanksgiving. About Brianna. About Mark. About choosing sides. About courage. I thought about Dr. Hartwell. About her sharp eyes. About her final words. Off the record. You presented well. Very well. Maybe it would be enough. Maybe the truth would win. Or maybe not. Maybe Celeste's lawyers would be better. Smoother. More convincing. Maybe the judge would see an old woman. Stubborn. Difficult. Needing protection. Maybe I would lose everything. The tea was almost gone. The cup was cooling in my hands. I sat there in the quiet kitchen. In my father's house. In my life. Whatever came, I had done what I could. Stood my ground. Told the truth. Fought back. Some battles you win. Some you lose. But some you fight because not fighting means surrender. And I wasn't done yet. Not by a long way. The clock struck 10. The sound echoed through the house. I washed my cup. I locked the doors. I turned out the lights. Tomorrow was another day. Another step. Another moment of standing. And I would be ready. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Dr. Hartwell's report arrived on Monday morning. 5 days after Thanksgiving. 1 week before the hearing. Walter called at 8:30. His voice was different. Lighter. Almost pleased. He said the report was good. Very good. Better than he'd hoped. He said to come to his office. He would review it with me. I drove through morning traffic. Gray December sky. First frost on the windshields. His office was warm. Coffee already poured. 2 cups on his desk. The report sat between them. 17 pages. Bound. Official. Walter opened it. He read key sections aloud. His finger following the lines. Dr. Hartwell found me fully competent. Cognitively intact. No signs of dementia or impairment. She noted my ability to manage finances independently. To maintain property. To make reasoned decisions. She described my responses as articulate. My memory as excellent. My judgment as sound. She acknowledged family conflict, but stated clearly this was interpersonal, not cognitive. Her conclusion was direct. No basis for conservatorship. Subject demonstrates full capacity. Walter looked up. He was almost smiling. He said this was strong evidence. Powerful testimony. But he said Celeste's team would attack it. They would bring their own experts. Create doubt. The hearing would still be difficult. Still uncertain. I asked what came next. He said we prepare. We rehearse. We anticipate every argument. He said the hearing was in 6 days. Saturday, December 7th. Wait, Saturday? He saw my confusion. He explained. The original date had been moved. Emergency motion by Celeste's lawyers. They claimed urgent circumstances, immediate need. The judge had agreed. December 7th. Pearl Harbor Day. I almost laughed. The irony was sharp. Walter said we would be ready. Our witnesses were confirmed. Documents prepared. Strategy set. I just needed to stay calm. Stay sharp. Stay myself. That afternoon I went to the cemetery. Lucas's grave was still fresh. New grass trying to grow. The headstone was simple. Gray granite. Lucas James Brennan, beloved son and husband, 1982 to 2025. I stood there, cold wind cutting through my coat. Dead leaves skittering across the ground. I hadn't been back since the funeral. 6 weeks ago. Couldn't bring myself. Now I needed to. Needed to say something. Needed closure maybe. I told him I was sorry. That I loved him. That I missed who he used to be. I told him about the hearing. About Celeste. About fighting for the house. I told him I understood. That ambition was seductive. That Celeste had changed him slowly. That somewhere inside he'd still been my son. My Lucas. But I couldn't let her win. Couldn't let her take what we'd built. What his grandfather built. The wind was the only answer. Cold. Empty. Final. I touched the headstone. The granite was ice cold under my palm. Then I walked back to the car. I didn't look back. The next 3 days blurred together. Walter and I met daily. Going over testimony. Reviewing questions. Practicing answers. He warned me about Richard Pemberton. Said he would be aggressive. Personal. Cruel if necessary. He would ask about Lucas. About grief. About my state of mind. He would suggest I was unstable. Paranoid. Imagining conspiracy. I needed to stay calm. Answer directly. Show no anger. The witnesses came to Walter's office. One by one. Margaret Chen. Father Thomas. Mrs. Kowalski. Each gave their statement. Each signed affidavits. Each promised to appear. Dr. Morrison sent her medical report. 3 pages. Detailed. Unambiguous. Patient demonstrates no cognitive impairment. Fully capable of independent living and decision-making. Brianna called Wednesday night. She asked if I was ready. If I needed anything. I said I was fine. I lied. She said she and Mark would be there. In the courtroom. Supporting me. Her voice was steady now. Determined. My daughter. My strength. Friday night I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet. Too full of memories and ghosts. I walked through the rooms again. Touching things. Saying goodbye maybe. The piano. I hadn't played in years. My mother's piano. Brought from her mother's house. The grandfather clock. Samuel's pride. He wound it every Sunday. Now it sat silent. The quilt on the guest bed. My grandmother's work. Hand-stitched. 80 years old. Every object held history. Held people. Held time. Tomorrow they would try to take it. All of it. Everything. I sat at the kitchen table. The same spot I'd sat for 42 years. Breakfast, dinner, homework, bills, life. The wood was worn smooth under my hands. Thousands of meals, thousands of moments. The refrigerator hummed. The furnace clicked on. House sounds, home sounds. I made myself sleep, forced myself upstairs, lay down, closed my eyes. Tomorrow would come whether I slept or not. Morning arrived gray and cold. I dressed carefully. Navy suit, white blouse, pearl earrings, Samuel's wedding ring on a chain. Professional, competent, strong. I ate breakfast, toast and coffee. My stomach was tight but I forced it down. At 8 o'clock Walter picked me up. He drove us downtown. Traffic was light. Saturday morning. The courthouse was old stone. Columns, steps, imposing and cold. Inside, security, metal detectors, IDs checked, then elevators, up to the 4th floor. Courtroom 4B was at the end of the hall. Double doors, brass handles. Walter opened the door. The room was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, rows of benches, judge's bench at the front. Celeste was already there, front row. Richard Pemberton beside her. Another lawyer too. Woman in gray. Celeste wore black. Still mourning. Still performing. She looked at me. Her face was smooth, expressionless, like marble. I looked back. I didn't smile, didn't blink. Walter guided me to our table. Left side. He set down his briefcase. Organized papers. Calm, methodical. Behind us, people filed in. Margaret Chen, Father Thomas, Mrs. Kowalski, Brianna and Mark. Audrey Vance came too. The appraiser. She nodded at me. Solid, supportive. The room filled slowly. Observers, court staff, a stenographer setting up. At 9 o'clock exactly, the bailiff stood. He announced the judge. Everyone rose. The rustle of clothing, the scrape of shoes. Judge Eleanor Martinez entered. She was 60 maybe. Gray hair pulled back, black robe, serious face. She sat. We sat. The hearing began. Richard Pemberton stood immediately. He introduced himself, his co-counsel, his client. He summarized the petition. Conservatorship for an elderly widow. Declining capacity. Family concern. Protective measures needed. His voice was smooth, professional, reasonable. He painted a picture. A grieving mother. Alone. Confused. Making poor decisions. Alienating family support. He said I refused help. Rejected guidance. Showed paranoid thinking. He said Lucas had tried to protect me. Had arranged for my care. But I'd resisted. Now I needed court intervention. For my own safety, my own welfare. He made it sound kind. Compassionate. Necessary. Walter stood. He introduced himself. He introduced me. He said this was not protection. This was predation. He said I was fully competent. Independent. Defending my rights against overreach. He said the evidence would show capacity. Clarity. Strength. He said conservatorship was unnecessary. Unwarranted. And transparently self-serving. The judge listened. Her face revealed nothing. She made notes. Brief. Precise. She said both sides would present evidence. Witnesses would testify. She would decide based on facts. She said this was about capacity. Nothing else. Not family conflict. Not property disputes. Capacity. She looked at me directly. Her eyes were sharp. Assessing. She asked if I understood the proceedings. I stood. My voice was clear. Steady. I said I understood perfectly. That I was here to defend my right to self-determination. She nodded. She said we would begin. The bailiff called the first witness. Richard Pemberton said he would call Mrs. Celeste Brennan. Celeste stood. She walked to the witness stand. She was sworn in. She sat. She looked composed, confident, righteous. Richard began his questions. Gentle, leading, sympathetic. Celeste described her concern, her late husband's worry, my resistance to family help. She said I'd become paranoid, suspicious, unable to accept support. She cited the property freeze, the hiring of lawyers, the refusal to cooperate. She said she only wanted what was best for me, what Lucas had wanted. Her voice was soft, sad, loving. She was lying. Every word was calculated, performative, but she was good, very good. The judge watched, listened, wrote. Walter would cross-examine next. Then our witnesses. Then me. The battle had started, and I sat there, hands folded, face calm, heart pounding. Everything I had, everything I was, on the line. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Walter stood for cross-examination. His movements were slow, deliberate. He walked toward the witness stand. His shoes were quiet on the floor. Celeste watched him. Her face was calm, almost bored. Walter asked about her marriage to Lucas. How long? 8 years, she said. He asked when she first met me. At their engagement party, 7 years ago. He asked how often she visited. Before Lucas died. She paused. Her tongue touched her lip. Maybe once a month, she said. Walter nodded. He asked about the house. Had she ever lived there? No, she said. They had their own home. He asked if she'd helped maintain the property. Repairs. Upkeep. Bills. No, she said. I managed everything myself. He asked when she first became concerned about my capacity. After Lucas died, she said. When I refused help, hired lawyers, became defensive. Walter asked if she knew I'd hired a lawyer before Lucas died. The courtroom went quiet. Celeste's eyes narrowed slightly. She said she didn't remember the exact timeline. Walter pulled out a document. The preservation filing, dated October 4th. Lucas died October 17th. 13 days later. He asked if she was aware of this filing. She said yes. Eventually, he asked why Lucas had been pursuing property transfer if I was competent then. Richard stood. He objected, called it speculation, argumentative. The judge sustained it, but the point landed. I saw it in her eyes. Walter asked about the transfer documents. The ones Celeste brought to my house. He asked who drafted them. Richard's firm, she said. He asked when. 2 weeks before Lucas's heart attack. Right after I filed the preservation papers, Walter noted. Richard objected again. The judge told Walter to move on. Walter asked about the conservatorship petition. Who initiated it? She said it was mutual. Her and the lawyers. Family decision. He asked if she stood to benefit financially. She said it wasn't about money. It was about my welfare. Walter asked again, would she benefit financially? She said the estate would benefit, which ultimately supported my care. Walter asked if she was a beneficiary of Lucas's will. Yes, she said. Primary beneficiary. He asked if the house was considered part of Lucas's estate. Richard stood again. Objected. The judge overruled. Celeste said the house was separate property, but could be used for my care needs. Walter asked her to define care needs. She said housing, medical expenses, professional assistance, whatever I required. He asked if selling the house would qualify as meeting care needs. She said possibly, if necessary. Walter nodded. He thanked her. He sat down. Celeste's face was tight now, the cracks showing. Richard called his expert next. Dr. Michael Rosen, psychiatrist, geriatric specialist. He had never met me, never evaluated me, never spoken to me. He had reviewed the petition, medical records, family statements. He testified about typical age-related decline, capacity concerns, red flags. He said resistance to help was common in early dementia, paranoid thinking, defensive behavior. He said family conflict often indicated underlying cognitive issues. He said the pattern described in the petition was concerning, warranted evaluation and intervention. Walter's cross was brief, sharp. He asked if Dr. Rosen had performed any direct assessment. No, he said. He'd relied on provided materials. Walter asked if he'd reviewed Dr. Hartwell's report, the independent evaluation. He said he'd seen it. He found it incomplete. Walter asked what was incomplete about 17 pages of cognitive testing. Dr. Rosen said single evaluations could miss subtle decline. Patterns emerge over time. Walter asked how much time he'd spent reviewing this case. 2 hours, Dr. Rosen said. Maybe 3. Walter asked his fee. $300 per hour. Dr. Rosen's face colored slightly. He said that was standard. Walter thanked him. He sat down. The judge called a 15-minute recess. People stood, stretched, whispered. The tension was thick, humid. I went to the hallway. Brianna found me. She hugged me tight, too tight. She said I was doing great. That Walter was brilliant. That we were winning. I wasn't sure. The judge's face revealed nothing. Just stone. Just focus. Walter came over. He said the afternoon would be our witnesses. Then me. He said to stay calm. Answer simply. Don't elaborate unless asked. The bailiff called us back. The room settled. The judge returned. Walter called Margaret Chen first. She testified about our morning walks, our conversations, my sharp memory, my independence. She said I was one of the most capable people she knew. Age irrelevant. Richard's cross was gentle, condescending. He asked if she had medical training. No, she said, but she had eyes and sense. Father Thomas came next. He described my volunteer work, my engagement, my reliability. He said the church community would be shocked by this petition. That I was a pillar. Mrs. Kowalski testified about the library, about my organization, my attention to detail, my dedication. She said I shelved books better than staff half my age. Each witness was solid, credible, certain, but Richard chipped at them, called them friends, biased, unable to see clinical decline. Then Dr. Morrison took the stand. She was unshakable. 20 years as my physician. Comprehensive records. Recent full evaluation. She testified I was in excellent health for my age. Cognitively intact. Fully independent. She said she would have no hesitation certifying my capacity. None whatsoever. Richard tried. He asked about age-related changes. Normal decline. Subtlety. Dr. Morrison shut him down. She said decline wasn't subtle. It was measurable, testable, observable. She said I showed none of it. 0. Richard asked about grief, about stress, about judgment under duress. Dr. Morrison said grief was normal, not pathological, not incapacitating. She said my judgment was sound. My decisions were reasoned. My capacity was clear. Richard had nothing left. He thanked her, sat down. The judge looked at Walter. She asked if he had more witnesses. He said one. He called me to the stand. The walk was long. 10 steps maybe. Felt like miles. The bailiff swore me in. I sat. The chair was hard, cold. The courtroom was silent. Every eye on me, watching, judging, deciding. Walter asked my name, my age, my address. I answered, voice steady, clear. He asked about my daily life, my routine, my independence. I described it. Morning coffee, meals, bills, maintenance, volunteer work, church. He asked about the house, what it meant to me. I told him, 42 years, my marriage, my children, my history, my life. He asked about Lucas, about the property transfer attempts. I explained, the refinancing story, the temporary authorization, the preservation filing. He asked about Celeste, about the visit, about the papers she brought. I described them, irrevocable transfer, incapacity triggers, her control. He asked why I refused to sign. I said because they would take my home, my autonomy, my choice. He asked if I understood this hearing. What was at stake? I said completely, my right to live my own life, in my own home, on my own terms. Walter nodded. He thanked me. He sat down. Richard stood. He approached slowly, predator circling. He asked about grief, how I was coping with Lucas's death. I said it was hard, that I missed him, that loss was painful. He asked if I was angry with Lucas. I said sometimes, yes. He asked if that affected my judgment, made me suspicious, defensive. I said no. It made me aware. He asked if I truly believed my daughter-in-law was trying to steal my house. I said the documents spoke for themselves. Transfer, control, benefit. He said those were standard estate planning tools. For my protection. I said I didn't need that protection. I was capable of protecting myself. He asked if I'd considered that refusing help was itself a sign of decline. The question hung there, loaded, dangerous. I looked at him, then at the judge, then back. I said refusing unwanted control was not decline. It was strength. The room was silent. Richard's jaw tightened. He asked if I realized how this looked. Fighting family, hiring lawyers, resisting support. I said it looked like self-defense. Which it was. He had nothing more. He sat down. Walter asked one more question. Did I want conservatorship? I said no, absolutely not. He asked why. I said because I was capable, competent, and free. The judge looked at me, long and steady. She said she would take everything under advisement. She would issue a ruling within 48 hours. The gavel fell. The sound cracked through the room. It was over. For now. Until Monday. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The weekend crawled by. Saturday afternoon I went home alone. Walter offered to stay, to wait with me, to talk. I said no. I needed silence. Needed my own walls around me. The house was cold when I arrived. I turned up the heat. The furnace rumbled to life. I made tea. The kettle screamed. The sound was sharp, final. I sat at the kitchen table. The same chair, the same spot, waiting. Outside, gray clouds moved across the sky. Heavy, pregnant with snow. The phone rang twice. Brianna checking in. Margaret asking how I was. I told them I was fine. Another lie. They knew it. I knew it. Sunday I went to church. Street. Anthony's. Early Mass. 8 o'clock. The sanctuary was warm. Incense and candles. Familiar smells. Safe smells. Father Thomas nodded at me from the altar. His face was kind. Worried. I prayed. Not for victory. Not for justice. Just for strength. For whatever came. The service ended. People filed out. Some stopped. Touched my hand. Whispered support. Mrs. Chen walked me to my car. She said the whole neighborhood was praying. I thanked her. My throat was tight. At home I tried to read. The words blurred. Tried to clean. My hands shook. I ended up in the living room. Standing. Looking at photographs on the mantel. Samuel young. Me younger. Lucas as a baby. Brianna in pigtails. My parents on their wedding day. My grandparents. Generations of faces. All of them had lived in this house. All of them had fought their own battles. Now it was my turn. My fight. My stand. Monday morning arrived gray and cold. Walter called at 9. His voice was calm. Steady. The ruling hadn't come yet. Courts were slow on Mondays, he said. Catch up from the weekend. Backlog. He said to stay near the phone. He would call the moment he heard. I waited. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like days. I cleaned the kitchen. Wiped counters already clean. Washed dishes already washed. The clock ticked. Loud. Relentless. Counting down to something. Or nothing. At 11:30 the phone rang. Walter's voice was different. Lighter. Almost trembling. He said the ruling had come. By email. Official court letterhead. He said I should sit down. I was already sitting. My legs had given out when the phone rang. He said the judge had denied the petition. Completely. Unequivocally. The words didn't register at first. Denied. No conservatorship. No control. No loss. Walter read from the ruling. The judge's words. Clear. Decisive. Final. The court finds no evidence of diminished capacity. The respondent demonstrated full cognitive function and independence. The petition appears motivated by property interests rather than genuine welfare concerns. Conservatorship is denied. Case dismissed with prejudice. With prejudice. That meant Celeste couldn't file again. Couldn't try again. Done. I sat there. The phone against my ear. Tears running down my face. Silent. Hot. Walter asked if I was okay. His voice was gentle. Concerned. I said yes. I was okay. More than okay. He said to celebrate. To rest. To breathe. He said he would file for costs. Make Celeste pay his fees. My fees. Everything. He said justice had been served. That truth had won. I thanked him. The words were small. Inadequate for what he'd done. He said no thanks needed. That it had been an honor. A privilege. We hung up. The house was quiet again. But different now. Lighter. Mine. I called Brianna. She screamed when I told her. Pure joy. Relief. Love. She said she was coming over. Right now. She would bring wine. Food. Celebration. I said okay. Come. Please come. I called Margaret. She cried. Said she knew. She always knew. I called Father Thomas. He said a prayer of thanksgiving. Right there on the phone. By afternoon my kitchen was full. Brianna. Mark. Margaret. Mrs. Chen. Audrey Vance. Even Mrs. Kowalski came. Brought cookies. Homemade. Chocolate chip. We ate. We laughed. We told stories. The house was alive again. Full again. Someone asked about Celeste. What she would do now. I said I didn't know. Didn't care. She was done. Finished. Gone from my life. Brianna said good riddance. Mark raised his glass. Everyone drank. The afternoon faded to evening. People left slowly, reluctantly, still celebrating. By 7 I was alone again. But the house felt different. Warm, safe, reclaimed. That night I walked through the rooms one more time. Not saying goodbye now. Saying hello. Saying mine. Saying home. The living room. Samuel's chair. The piano. The photographs. Still here. Still safe. The kitchen. My mother's china. The table. 42 years of meals. Of life. Upstairs. The bedroom. Lucas's old room. Brianna's. All unchanged. All protected. I went to the cedar box. I pulled it out. I opened it. The deed was still there. My father's signature. My mother's. Mine. Samuel's. I touched the paper. The edges were soft. Worn. Loved. I thought about adding something. A note. An explanation. For whoever came next. But the deed said everything. This house. This land. This life. Earned. Kept. Defended. I closed the box. I slid it back under the bed. Downstairs, I made tea. Earl Grey. The steam rose and disappeared. I sat at the kitchen table. The house settled around me. Creaking. Breathing. Living. Outside, the first snow had started. Small flakes. Gentle. Quiet. They caught the streetlight. Glowing. Dancing. Beautiful. I thought about Lucas. About the funeral. About the magnolia petals falling on his casket. I thought about Celeste. About Richard. About Dr. Rosen. All of them wanting. Taking. Claiming. But they'd failed. The law had seen through them. Justice had held. Not because I was special. Not because I was perfect. But because I was competent. Capable. Free. And because I'd fought. Every step. Every moment. Every breath. The tea grew cold in my hands. I didn't drink it. Just held it. Warmth fading. The snow was heavier now. Covering the yard. The street. The magnolia tree. Winter was here. Real winter. Cold and clean and honest. Spring would come. Eventually. It always did. The magnolia would bloom again. White petals. New life. Continuance. I would be here to see it. In this house. In this life. On my terms. Some battles you win by being louder. Stronger. More powerful. Some you win by being stubborn. Patient. Unbreakable. This was the second kind. The quiet kind. The kind that mattered. I stood. I washed the cup. I locked the doors. New locks. Strong locks. Mine. Upstairs, I lay down. The bed was soft. Familiar. Safe. Sleep came easy. Deep and dreamless. The sleep of the victorious. The free. Morning would bring new challenges. Bills. Maintenance. Age. Time. But those were normal problems. Human problems. Not legal cages. Not stolen homes. Those I could handle. Those I'd been handling for 73 years. The house was quiet. Just the furnace. Just the wind. Just me. Samuel's chair sat empty. Lucas's room sat silent. But their memories lived. Held. Honored. And I was still here. Standing. Breathing. Living. Not despite my age. Not despite my grief. Not despite anything. Just living. Simply. Powerfully. Mine. The snow fell through the night. Covering everything. Making the world new. By morning, the yard was white. Clean. Untouched. I looked out the window. Coffee in hand. New day beginning. The magnolia tree stood dark against the snow. Bare branches. Winter skeleton. But the roots were strong. Deep. Anchored. Just like me. Just like this house. Just like this life. Rooted. Standing. Unshaken. And that was enough. That was everything. That was victory.